All right, what's up, guys and girls? How's it going? I am Is There No One Else? In the video I'm bringing today, I wanted to discuss ESO structural issues with like the PTS and patch note changes, and what we can get, what could be done to streamline the process for balance changes or incremental changes in general. I'm speaking to you guys. Obviously, I am a little bit of a nerd. I post videos on YouTube. I post ESO videos on YouTube. I love watching sports. I'm a big football, baseball, and basketball fan. But more than just watching sports, I love watching like what organizations do to succeed. Whether it's bringing in a top line GM or going out and investing minimal money in the market on free agents that have had big impacts and like it just drastically changes your team around the edges, or going out and investing in big money free agents, or just developing a scouting department and an analytics department that allows your team to succeed. Like those types of things are stuff that I actually really enjoy looking at. And so when I'm participating in the PTS, I've noticed a couple of issues, in my opinion, that I could see changed. Now, this isn't going to be a rag on ESO or ZeniMax sort of thing, because that's not what I do. I just wanted to talk about the difference between PvE and PvP a little bit, and what they could do from the PvP aspect to make it better. So, on the PvE side, they've done a really good job of bringing in good people. Like Gilliam the Rogue, in my opinion, has really helped the PvE side. You have more balance as far as classes go. Like I feel like obviously there's still some imbalance. Obviously, like some classes, magic or stamina overperforms one or the other as each patch goes. That's always going to be the case, but it's a lot closer now than it's ever been. And because of people out there doing rotational tests, doing all these things, it's really helped them balance things out and make things better. And so I think that's great. You have the Asian God on YouTube, you have Lyco, you have Alcast, you have all these guys able to like point out the disparities, show these things, and then you have guys in the department that are able to analytically look at this stuff and show essentially what the issues are and like how to fix them. And so I feel like we've seen a very good change in the PvE department for what in towards balance. PvP, I would say in general, I agree with about 80 to 90% of what they've done over the last 3 or 4 patches. I really love the racial changes, what they did for all the classes or the races. I liked their last patch. The Elsewhere patch I still feel is like one of the most, like outside of a few issues and Cyrodiil performance, which is its own thing, I feel like the balance changes were some of the best that I've seen. However, the issue is the first one that I wanted to talk about, guys, is the first issue that I've found is like I've been playing on the PTS for the last year and a half, maybe a little over a year and a half. I've had the PTS for over a year, and I try to go on there, I test builds, I duel, I do all this stuff, but in general, there's just not many people in open world PvP dueling or doing open world PvP. They're not zerging down keeps. They're not taking stuff. They're not taking scrolls. You don't have these big XV1 and 1vx fights because there's just not people that are testing these things. And so, in my opinion, there's a lot of skills that you cannot test unless you have that environment. Like, unless you recreate an environment for PvP, you are not going to find PvP balance issues. So, as an example, this entire, rubber banding of vigor changes, where they buff vigor by a lot, and then people are like, hey, this is overpowered. And then, people are dueling with it, and they're like, no, with the new dots, it makes sense. You can't tell how big of an impact the dots are going to have versus healing on all these things unless you have an open world PvP environment to where you can say, hey, this is actually way too strong. These dots are undodgeable. And basically when you fight 4 people, it's like you're just nonstop recovering from all the damage coming in, and something needs to be adjusted in the PvP department. The problem is they don't have a test environment for that. And so people don't have the incentive to go on there. A, because this PTS patch, more than any, was the laggiest that I've ever participated in. So it was just hard to be on there and weapon swap and try and do anything. You're not going to PvP when you can't weapon swap. And so they need to increase Cyrodiil performance like much faster than they say that they're going to, obviously. Like it needed to happen yesterday. Like patch performance, Cyrodiil performance needed to happen last year. It needed to happen 2 years ago. Like it's just constantly getting worse, and it's it's the same issue in the PTS, and so people aren't going to go in there and test stuff because it's shit, and so that needs to happen. On top of that, you need to, in my opinion, ZeniMax needs to do things to provide incentive for players to test on the PTS, and so. The two ideas that I kind of came up with in my head is like, hey, you're on PC, you have a PC account, you want to participate on the PTS, you give them gold mats each week. If you don't want to give, like the first idea was you give them crowns. You give them 1K crowns a week if they generate 200K AP or 100K or 500K, whatever benchmark you have. Like you give them 1,000 crowns, and that allows them to invest in your crown store. And it gives them an incentive to go out there and test stuff for you in PvP. Because, the PvE testing environment is great. You have people testing rotations all the time, but you can't mimic that from a PvP perspective. And so I think doing that, whether it's crowns or gold mats or whatever, would really go a long ways towards, creating an environment to where people could test stuff. And I think it would just be a minimal cost from ZeniMax's department while also helping people give them an incentive to, not only like test stuff on the PTS and provide feedback, but then you actually have like an entire, you can actually compare stuff. Like you now have a campaign PvPing on PTS, and you can now see where the imbalance is going to come in, and you can make adjustments. So I would like to see those changes. I think that would help quite a bit. Obviously, you can't stop people from, you can't force people to participate on the PTS, so that only goes so far. The other change I think would actually go a long ways would be to, I've talked about it on previous videos. I really do feel like that in general, the response time for ZeniMax with these balance issues is really slow and it's really lacking. And the perfect example I can provide right now is currently on Xbox and elsewhere, we still have the bash build problem. We still are dealing with bash builds that come in and nuke your health. Like, unless you have high damage mitigation, high resistances, and you're holding block, there is a huge problem with, bash builds coming in, and they just dominate PvP right now. And it's completely broken, and, they fixed it on PC, but we haven't gotten the fix yet on Xbox. And it's been, 2 months now, 3 months, something like that, and we still have these issues. And so, having that faster response time, not just for PC, not just for Xbox or whatever, would go a long ways. And so I've been reading the PTS forum, I've been reading the forums, I've been reading people commenting about how dots are just way overperforming right now. Although I like the direction, I like moving from a tank meta and making dots more viable, having dots be unblockable is an issue. And especially when you're fighting in a 1vx situation. It's not that people shouldn't do more damage, it's that unblockable damage. And it kind of reminds me of a couple years ago when Templars had overpowered Radiant Destruction, and they could just spam it on you, and it was undodgeable. There's nothing you could do to avoid it, and if you had 2 or 3 people hitting you with it, you were essentially dead unless you were super, super tanky. And I think that's what this patch is going to be. You're going to see this, people aren't going to get away from the tank meta. They're going to be more tanky because they have to be more tanky if they want to survive against a bunch of damage over time effects. And so, although I like the change, it's a little bit too far right now. And so I think they need to tweak it. But the problem is the issues that have come up on the PTS is, Resolving Vigor has overperformed as far as heals go. And people have been able to go into trials without healers, and they run Stam DDs, and with Resolving Vigor, or with Echoing Vigor, they can stack all these, and they can basically do what a healer does, but now have more damage. And that's wrong too. And so they're going to be ZeniMax in general is probably going to be very hesitant to buff healing for Vigor because they don't want it to overperform and take away the healer's value in PvE, which I completely respect and makes a lot of sense. So what they would have to do, in my opinion, is they have to look at these changes and apply it to Battle Spirit. Like maybe in PvP, dots do 30% less damage. Something like that. So you keep healing the way it is, and then you're only impacting these changes from a PvP perspective. You provide these changes strictly from a PvP aspect. That way it doesn't double dip and impact the other side. Because I think they actually like where it is from a balance perspective for PvE, and that's why they're going to let it sit for a little bit. But, I almost got nuked by a bash build there. The problem is at the end of the day, the ZeniMax can be more PvE focused. They can be more quest focused. It doesn't matter. Like if PvP is a back burner for them, that's fine. However, their goal, the goal of any company is to make money, and they have a large amount of players that love to play PvP. Ignoring or doing things that alienate the PvP community, that force them to go to other games, is a poor business model. They're not going to make as much money if they did things and made changes quickly to at least make it a little bit more enjoyable from a PvP department, from a PvP aspect. And so at the end of the day, if their goal is to make money, they should be doing things to at least quickly change the imbalance in PvP so people still have fun doing it. Doing the incremental changes towards lag and Cyrodiil performance is good, but then also just having that quick response time to fix things when they're broken would also be good. And so those are two of the biggest changes that I think would really help. As a summation, having a PTS test environment that actually mimics open world PvP would be good, and then having a quicker response time to these broken patches, and then using it, only making these changes from like a battle spirit perspective, so that you can go in and say, hey, you know what? Earthgore is way too strong in PvP. It's healing a bunch of groups. It's basically making people unkillable, which is making the game environment poor. So for now, we're going to remove Earthgore from PvP. You'll still be able to use it in trials and dungeons and all this other stuff because it's a cool set. But from a PvP environment, you will no longer get the proc until we come up with a better way to fix it. That's just the way it is right now because we feel like it's affecting the health of the game. Bash builds. We're going to address bash builds in a larger scale, or maybe we'll take a shorter amount of time than 2 months to incorporate the issue with bash builds. Dots. Maybe we buff Resolving Vigor in the Battle Spirit by 50% to encounter dot issues, or maybe you don't adjust Vigor and you adjust dots. Whatever it is. And so I think looking at it from a Battle Spirit perspective and being more proactive would be better. So, like I said, guys, I think in general, I like the changes that ZeniMax has made. I do actually like the Elsewhere patch. When Elsewhere has been working properly, I think it's been really good. Outside of bash builds, I've really enjoyed PvPing in Elsewhere. I hop on my Magplar, I can 1vx with it. I hop on my Mag DK, I can 1vx with it. I hop on my Petsork, I am God with it. Like that. Obviously there's imbalance with some classes, of course, but there's no class that I have played, and the only class I don't have right now is a Magicka Necro. That's the only class I haven't played in open world PvP, and I feel like every class that I've played, I'm not being held back too much. Some classes still need fixes, but this is the closest to balance that it's ever been, in my opinion. And being able to 1vx on mag classes and stam classes is a good sign. Being able to run different builds that you guys are seeing in this video, that's a good sign of balance. However, the problem is all it takes is an overpowered bash ultimate or overperforming dots that are undodgeable, and all of a sudden you take what looks to be a really good patch, and all of a sudden it's a really poor patch. And so yeah, those are the changes that I would like to see. Those are the things that I would like to see adjusted, because if they can adjust dots a little bit and tone it down, obviously Soul Splitting Trap and Entropy, regardless of your thought on it, they're the strongest things in PvP right now, and everybody's basically trying to slot them on their bars, and I don't think that's balanced. That's not the idea of PvP balance. The idea is to have a bunch of skills that you can use, not skills that you're forced to use regardless of whatever build you're on. So I'm gonna leave that here. If you guys have any questions or comments, like I said, guys, I'm not saying that I'm right with this. These are just my thoughts. I feel like if they did these changes, we would have a smoother transition for PvP. We would have a chance for there would be less frustration from patch to patch. You would have less people talking about quitting, and then you would have a more robust, healthy PvP community with more people buying your crowns, spending more money on your game, and you would continue to do what you're doing in PvE, where you have a lot more balance and people are super strong, and they're really enjoying what their classes are and what their patch is. So I'm gonna cut it here. Like I said, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.